Hello, welcome to today's video, which is going to be on the topic of when is a character done? Now obviously, done is really subjective and will vary from each person and from each character. So I'm not going to be able to give a precise exact moment that's going to work for everyone. But what I can do is give general guidelines on how to best save your resources and basically be as efficient as possible with them. I think someone actually suggested this video in one of my other videos, but I don't remember what video that was and where the comment is, so I'm sorry. But if you suggested this, then thank you to you, random viewer. Now, if you've seen my hyper investing video, you might be thinking, hey, Meej, you're literally the worst person to be giving this talk. And I know, I get it, you're right. I'm a hyper investor. I hyper invest resources into my favorite characters, not because it is really a huge damage increase in the end, but because I'm a dirty little trash simp. But it doesn't mean that I don't know when is a good time to stop for other characters that I don't hyper invest in, or some general rules of thumb for when people are looking to maximize efficiency and minimize how many resources they put into a character unnecessarily. So that's what this video is going to be today. But before we get into it, you know I gotta give you my Twitch spiel. Twitch.tv/Meejin, MEEJIIN. You can join us there and witness absolutely thrilling moments like this.
Not yet.
He sounds like he's hurt.
Soon. He is dead.
He's dead? Wow. Anyway, without further ado, let's hop into today's video. Alright, so first and foremost, let me define what I mean when I say done within the context of this video. So when it comes to saving as many resources as possible and being as efficient as possible, done to me means you could throw that character out on the field with as little investment as possible and still have them be playable, usable, and strong. So first thing I want to talk about is when to stop leveling characters. I remember when I first started playing and I was watching videos on how to build characters and watching streamers talk about building characters, a lot of people recommended stopping at level 80 Ascended for most characters. The reason being is that the jump from resources needed from level 80 to level 90 is pretty significant. But the more I've played and the more I understand about the game, the more I've realized that a lot of characters can benefit from level 90. So I'm going to talk about 3 categories of characters that you will want to bring to level 90. Your DPS characters, characters doing transformative reactions, and HP and def scaling characters. Let's talk about why. So first and foremost, your main DPS. Your main DPS character, or damage per second character, is doing the most damage out of all the characters in your team. And usually they're the ones on the field doing the damage. So unsurprisingly, your main DPS characters are going to require more resources to build than your support characters. The reason you want to level them to 90 is, of course, you're trying to squeeze out as much damage as possible from them, since they are the damage dealer. So as a general rule of thumb, you'll want to bring your main DPS to level 90. The second category is characters doing transformative reactions. Now I've talked about transformative reactions a lot in my videos. I covered it more extensively in my no novelty venti video, but I've mentioned it a bunch in the past before. Basically, just to cover it really quickly, transformative reactions are reactions that are only affected by your character's level and their EM. The list of transformative reactions we have in the game right now are Overloaded, Electrocharge, Superconduct, Swirl, Burning, Bloom, Hyperbloom, Virgin, and Shattered. So 9 transformative reactions. So as I mentioned, the 2 factors that are going to affect the damage of your transformative reactions is your character's level and their EM. So that is why you'll want to level characters doing those reactions to 90, because it is quite a substantial damage increase. I'm actually going to throw up a nifty little chart that I found on the Genshin wiki that shows you just how much of a damage increase it is for each type of transformative reaction. It's really, really cool, and as you can see, it does vary based on the type of reaction you are doing. So that's why it's important to build characters doing these kinds of reactions to 90. But I would like to clarify something here. Not all these characters need to be built on EM. The characters you want to build on EM are the ones you know will be triggering these types of reactions. For example, your animal characters doing swirl reactions, you know they're going to be the one triggering swirl, therefore their EM will matter. Also characters, for example, like Kuki Shinobu in a Hyperbloom comp or Toma in a Virgin comp, you know that those 2 are going to be the ones triggering their respective reactions because the Bloom core is just sitting there on the field and will react with either that Electro or Pyro triggered by one of those characters. Therefore, the damage of that reaction will scale with the level and EM of the character triggering it. That's why it's safe to build those 2 on EM. But in a comp like an Electrocharge comp or Taser comp, it is really hard to control who's going to be triggering the Electrocharge reaction. Just as an example, in my recent Barbara video, I tried out Tartigal's, Barbara, Fischl, and Beto Taser comp team, and none of them were built on EM because I don't know who's going to be triggering the electro charge. It could be any of them, right? However, I did level those characters to level 90, except Fischl because I haven't built her yet, but that's fine. So to bring it back to my original point here, even if you're not going to build transformative reaction characters on EM, you still should level them to 90 because that will play a part in some of their damage. Finally, the last category of character that you want to bring to level 90 are your HP and def scaling characters. The reason for this being is that HP and def scaling characters don't get to double dip on the attack stats that weapons can provide. Every weapon provides a set amount of base attack that for most characters builds up a good chunk of their base attack. As you can imagine, this is not particularly useful for HP or def scaling characters who scale on those respective traits and not attack, which is why it's important to level them. Let's use Albedo as an example. So according to Kuching mains, going from level 80 to 90 with Albedo is about a 10% damage increase. Albedo's primary source of damage is his skill, which scales off his def. So when you level Albedo to 90 and he gets more def, his skill is going to do more damage. Another great example is a character like Yelan, who is a pure HP scaling character. She does not get any use at all out of attack stats. So leveling her to 90 will boost her damage a lot because you are boosting her HP. So as you can see, it's quite a good increase for a lot of characters to be brought to level 90. So who do you not level to 90? Generally, your attack scaling supports can be left at 80 ascended. You do want to ascend them at 80 because it unlocks the rest of their talent levels, which is more important at that point than bringing them to 90. So that's why you want to ascend them, but do you have to bring them to level 90? Not really. So really quick, let's fire off some rapid fire examples just so that you can get the idea of what we just discussed. Number 1, Hu Tao. DPS character first of all, but on top of that she scales off HP. Level 90. Done. Xing Shou, support character who scales off attack. Leave him at 80 ascended, focus on talents. Done. EM Toma in a Burgeon team. Level 90. Done. Easy. Alright, the next thing we're going to discuss is talents. So obviously I can't specifically cover every character's talents and which one should and should not be leveled. But again, these are some general rules and guidelines that you can kind of use to help you save some resources on your talents. Now again, personally, I am horrible at conserving resources on talents. I've triple crowned a lot of characters, probably too many characters. My advice is, if you don't constantly want to be resource poor or a local fool like me, don't do that. Here instead are some general rules for you to follow regarding character talent levels. So first and foremost, your DPS character. Once again, they require more resources overall and talents are no exception. Generally, you will want to level all 3 of your DPS characters' talents. Because again, like I said, they're likely going to be on the field, utilizing their whole kit, which could include normal attacks and skill and burst, the whole shebang. Of course, what talents you should go in on the most is going to vary from each character. For your DPS characters, investing in talents level 9 or even crowning it can be worth it. So that's the general rule of thumb for your DPS characters. Level all their talents at least a little bit, depending on their kit. Go in harder on the ones that do more damage for them. Now let's talk sub DPS and support characters. Now typically, broadly speaking, for these types of characters, you can leave their normal attacks untouched. A good chunk of sub DPS and support characters use either their skill or their burst to support your team and are not out on the field using their normal attacks. Therefore, it's kind of useless to level them even at all. So if you're really trying to save on resources, you don't even have to bother with the normal attacks. Let's take Diona for example, acting as a shielder and healer in your team. Her shield comes from her skill and her heals come from her burst. Her normal attack, what's it going to do for you? Probably not much. You could straight up leave that guy at level 1. There are, of course, always exceptions to the rule. I'm going to take Kazuha as an example. So Kazuha's skill and his ult are the most important parts of his kit when it comes to supporting your team. But it's worth leveling his normal attacks at least a little because his plunge damage when he comes down from his skill counts as normal attack damage. So when you level that, you're going to get more damage when he's plunging. For most Kazuhas, it's not worth bringing to like level 10, but investing a little to maybe like 6 can help you squeeze out enough damage to make it noticeable. So normal attacks, leave them, and then the skill or the burst, it's going to vary per character. For example, a character like Xing Shou is going to want his burst leveled because it is the primary source of his damage as a sub DPS, whereas a character like Zhongli will want more levels on his skill because that is his shield, which is what most people run him for in a team. Psst. Remember how I said transformative reaction damage is only based on the level and EM of your character doing the transformative reaction? Remember how I told you that? Well, guess what? You can save resources on your transformative reaction characters by not leveling their talents very much, or even at all. I talked about this more again in my Venti No Novelty review, which I will link somewhere, I'm sure, for your viewing pleasure. But characters like Swirl Venti or Swirl Sucrose can have their talents completely unleveled and still be doing a lot for your team. So if you were really looking to save on resources there, you could technically technically not level those characters' talents at all, I still recommend doing it at least a little bit, because even if they're not doing transformative reaction swirl damage with their talent level, their animo damage scales off their talent level, so even if you were to bring it to like 6, you know, it's better than nothing. Again, there's an exception to every exception. What comes to mind for me is Kuki Shinobu. Even though she's often built off EM to proc Hyperbloom reactions, that doesn't mean that I would say you should leave her skill totally unleveled, because she's also a healer, and the amount she heals is based off her skills level. Again, you don't have to crown it, but level it at least just a little bit. So when is a character done when it comes to their talents? I'd say a safe bet for the strongest part of your character's kit is level 9. For your sub DPS and supports, level 8. For the normal attacks of those sub DPS or support characters, in most cases, you can leave them at level 1. Alright, let's talk artifacts. So depending on how invested you are in perfecting your main DPS character, you might never be done with artifacts. But at a certain point, you start to enter min-maxing territory. And min-maxing territory is not efficient. The better your artifacts become, the harder it is to get artifacts that are better than those artifacts. You're spending a lot of resin for a very minimal damage increase usually. So how do you not be that person? Basically, for a lot of characters, you're just gonna want a passable set bonus. And you're just gonna wanna meet a few of the following criteria that I'm gonna talk about. For just about every single character, the first thing you wanna do is make sure you have enough ER. A lot of characters rely on their burst in one way or another. So by having enough ER, you know that you can reliably cast your burst every rotation. Again, this is not for every character, but for a lot of them, make sure you have enough ER. For your DPS characters, most of the time you want to check out your crit value. This is a general rule of thumb. I think you'd be pretty happy sitting at 20 to 30 crit value for your main DPS's artifacts. I'll throw up this nifty little graphic that someone on Reddit made to show you how you determine what is a 20 to 30 crit value piece. But basically, you don't need like 40 plus CV on your main DPS's artifacts to finish Abyss or clear content. Artifacts are the biggest resin sink when it comes to building a character, so the least amount of time you can spend farming them, the better for your resources. Mathematically, it's way easier to get around a 25 crit value piece than it is to get a 40 plus one. So most characters are going to be totally usable and playable with mid crit value pieces. It doesn't have to be spectacular. Of course, don't forget that crit is not everything. You're going to need some attack percentage, maybe some HP or def percentage, depending on what character you're running. With your EM characters, it's going to be pretty easy. You're just going to want enough ER and then as much EM as possible, since EM reactions cannot crit, with the exception of some of the Dendro reactions when you have Nahida C2. Just to quickly close off the artifacts section, when it comes to leveling your artifacts, where do you stop? I personally think that at some point you should level every artifact you can to 20 if you're using it. I know it's a gamble, and I know that level 16 to 20 when it comes to artifacts is a huge jump. So start with your DPS characters first and then work with your support characters after. Try to bring your support characters artifacts to at least level 16. And remember that when you find a better piece, you can sacrifice your already level artifact into the new artifact. So it's not like you're really losing those resources forever. So to summarize, when it comes to artifacts, when is a character done? It's tough to say. It really is. Honestly, for most characters, you can get away with pretty mid artifacts. So just get your characters a passable set of whatever they need, be it the 2-piece, 2-piece, or 4-piece. Do what you can for them, farm artifacts or strong box things when you can, and then improve artifacts as you go along. Finally, character weapons. This is going to be a quick and easy one. When are you done when it comes to leveling your character's weapon? At level 90. Always. It's not a gamble like artifacts. You know you're going to get a guaranteed increase in damage when you level your weapon. In a lot of cases, it's better to level your character's weapon from 80 to 90 than it is to level your character from 80 to 90. When you level your weapon from 80 to 90, you get a nice added chunk of base attack, as well as the added secondary stat of the weapon. Base attack is only made up of two things: your character's base attack plus their weapon. Again, it matters less for a character like Yelan, who does not care at all about base attack, but it's still worth it for whatever other stat your weapon has on it. So to wrap things up, when is a character done? It is ultimately up to you. There's no right or wrong way to do it, really. You could spend the bare minimum on your characters and have a great time. You could hyper-invest in characters and farm endlessly for the same character over and over again. That's up to you. You're on your own journey. But if you're looking to be as efficient as possible, then hopefully these little points can help you out in order to minimize the amount of resources you spend on your character and maximize the gains you get out of it. So that's gonna do it from me. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any other tips on when you consider a character done, feel free to let me know in the comments below, or join me live on twitch.tv/Meejin and tell me over there. That's also the perfect place to berate me about my hyper investing habits, because I do none of the things I just told you about here. So there's that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye! Those are the 3 general rules of thumb. That was lame. Oh, that hurt my bicep. Artifacts are the bit. Artifacts are the bit. Why can't I say biggest?